at the end of the topic, you'll be able to recognize the importance of nervous system. List down the components of the nervous system. Draw and label the structure of a neuron. Classify the nerves based on their functions. Discuss the facts about the human brain. The cells of the nervous system include neurons and glial cells. Neurons are the functional unit of the nervous system. They receive and process the electrochemical impulses from various parts of the body and generate responses. Glial cells are called the supportive cells in the nervous system. These cells do not help in neurotransmissions, but instead surround the neurons to provide support, supply nutrients and oxygen to neurons, and clean up the dead neurons. Neurons are specialized cells of the brain that transmits nerve impulse. The cell body of a neuron is also called as cyton. The cell body contains a large nucleus with one or two nucleoli. This part of the neuron is responsible for the synthesis of all the neural proteins and membranes. Nissl granules or Nissl substances are large-sized granules present in the cytoplasm of the cell body. These are mainly involved in protein synthesis. Dendrites are short branched projections that are seen on the surface of the neuron. The number of dendrites present on a neuron may vary from a few to several thousands. They are responsible for receiving information from other neurons and transmitting them to the cell body. Axon is a long branched structure projecting from the cell body. This is also called as the nerve fiber. Most of the axons are covered by a layer called the myelin. The main function of the myelin sheath is to increase the speed of transmitting the nerve impulse. Nodes of Ranvier are small gaps formed in the axon between the myelin sheaths. At this point, the axon membrane is uninsulated and is therefore capable of propagating the signals at a faster rate. Nerve terminal is the end of the axon that forms a synapse with the other neuron. Usually, it is the point at which a neuron passes its information to the adjacent neuron.
There are 5 types of neuron cells: myelinated or medulated or white neurons. When the axon is closed by the white fatty myelin cover, it is called as myelinated or medulated or white neurons. This forms the white matter of our brain. Non-myelinated or non-medulated or grey neurons. This neuron is not enclosed by the myelin sheath, so it appears greyish in color. The axon is covered by only neurolemma and Schwann cells. This type of neuron is found in the grey matter of cerebrum. Unipolar neurons. The embryonic nervous tissue contains unipolar neurons. A unipolar neuron has a nerve cell body with a single process of fiber which will act both as axon and dendron. Bipolar neurons. The sensory hair cells of the sense organs like rods and cones of retina are made up of bipolar neurons. Each bipolar neuron has a cell body and 2 processes at the ends, one acting as axon and the other acting as dendron. Multipolar neuron. The cerebral cortex contains the multipolar neurons. Each multipolar neuron has a cell body with many dendrites and an axon.
The 3 divisions of the nervous system are called central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and autonomic nervous system. Brain and spinal cord are the components of the central nervous system. Cranial nerves arising from the brain and spinal nerves arising from the spinal cord form the peripheral nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is subdivided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is involved in controlling involuntary actions of the body. The nervous system is made up of 3 components. They are brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Brain, the processing unit of the nervous system, is present inside the skull. It receives, analyzes, and integrates information and generates responses. The spinal cord is the continuation of the brain, which is well protected by the vertebral column. The spinal cord receives information from the brain and passes it to appropriate organs. It also analyzes and processes small amounts of information and generates responses on its own. Nerves connect the various organs of the body to the spinal cord and brain. Though the nerves cannot analyze and understand the information or generate responses, they carry information from various organs to the spinal cord and brain, and vice versa. Now let us learn about the membranes called the meninges that cover and protect the brain and spinal cord. The meninges have 3 layers. They are the dura mater, the arachnoid membrane, and the pia mater. The dura mater is the outermost layer covering the central nervous system. The middle one is the arachnoid membrane. It is a web-like structure made up of collagen and elastin fibers. Pia mater is tightly attached to the neural tissue of the spinal cord and the brain. Cerebrospinal fluid fills the space between the pia mater and the arachnoid membrane. It protects the brain and spinal cord from injuries and provides nutrition to the cells of brain and spinal cord. Let us talk about the peripheral nervous system. All the nerves that arise from the brain and spinal cord are the components of the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system consists of 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Altogether, there are 43 pairs of nerves. The cranial nerves originate from different areas of the brain. Some of them are sensory, some are motor, and a few are mixed nerves. Branches of these nerves reach the retina, ear, nose, tongue, eye muscles, face, neck, and pharynx. Among the 12 pairs of cranial nerves, the 10th cranial nerve, or vagus, is more important as it controls the rate of heartbeat and secretions of pancreas. The spinal nerves originate from the spinal cord. All of them are mixed nerves having both sensory and motor fibers. The sensory fibers originate from the dorsal horn of the spinal cord and carry information from different organs to the spinal cord. The motor fibers originate from the ventral horns of the spinal cord and supply information required for the movement of the muscles from the spinal cord to different organs. The brain is a soft tissue, so it is well protected by the bony cranium or skull. The cranium is made up of skull bones and it protects the brain from injuries. The brain is divided into 3 main parts. They are forebrain or cerebrum, midbrain, and the hindbrain. Forebrain, otherwise called as cerebrum, is the largest part of the brain. The groove that runs in the middle of the cerebrum divides it into 2 cerebral hemispheres, namely left and right cerebral hemispheres. Both the hemispheres are connected by a bundle of axons. The outer portion of the cerebral hemisphere is grey in color and is called as cerebral cortex. There are several ridges called gyri and the grooves called sulci on the surface of the brain. They can accommodate more number of neurons and increases the surface area of the cortex. Parts of the brain below the cerebrum are together known as diencephalon. It has centers that control emotions such as pain and pleasure. It connects the forebrain with the midbrain. The cerebral hemispheres divides into 4 lobes, namely frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. The frontal lobe is located at the front portion of the brain. The functions of the frontal lobe are concerned with thought, reasoning, behavior, memory, smell, and movement. The parietal lobe is located behind the frontal lobe. The functions of this lobe involve sensory perception, spatial relations, hearing, and sensation. Temporal lobe is found on either side of the brain. The function of this lobe is concerned with behavior, memory, hearing, vision pathways, and emotions. The occipital lobe is located at the back of the brain. The function of this lobe involves speech, motion, sensation, abstract concepts, and vision. The midbrain consists of groups of nerve cells and a large number of myelinated axons of the nerve cells. The midbrain controls many important functions such as the visual, eye movement, and auditory systems. The hindbrain is made up of cerebellum, pons varioli, and medulla oblongata. Often the pons varioli and medulla oblongata are referred together as the brain stem. The cerebellum lies behind the cerebrum. It has grey matter on the outer surface and white matter in the deeper layers. It controls all the voluntary movements of the body and is also responsible for the maintenance of equilibrium and posture of the body. The brain stem consists of pons varioli and medulla oblongata. Pons varioli is a part of the central nervous system that relays sensory information between the cerebellum and cerebrum that deal primarily with sleep, respiration, swallowing, bladder control, hearing, equilibrium, taste, eye movement, facial expressions, and posture. Medulla oblongata has the white matter on the surface and grey matter in the deeper layers. It controls the vital functions like heartbeat, blood pressure, temperature, and secretion by salivary glands. The medulla oblongata continues as the spinal cord, so all the nerve fibers from the brain pass through the medulla oblongata into the spinal cord. When a stimulus is applied to a neuron, a small electrical potential is generated. It is otherwise said to be action potential or nerve impulse. This nerve impulse travels along the length of the axon until it reaches the nerve terminal. From the nerve terminal, it is either transferred to another neuron or to an effector organ. The brain is a marvelous and most complicated organ in human beings. It has more than 10 billion neurons and 10 to 50 times more number of glial cells. The brain weight is about 2% of body weight, but it consumes about 20% of the total oxygen consumed by the body. The brain is only dependent on glucose for its energy requirements. Unlike other tissues, brain cannot use fatty acids for energy production. The greatness of the human brain is to analyze a problem and find a solution for it. The human brain has aesthetic sense to appreciate poetry, music, sculpture, paintings, and the beauty of nature. One more wonderful capacity of the human brain is communication through language. When other animals make sounds and communicate to a very limited extent, man has the ability to give a script to the sounds. In the form of script, man has transferred the gathered information from one generation to the next. The thinking of the human brain can give peace to the world or destroy the world. The decade 1990 to 2000 is known as Decade of the Brain. Still, a large number of scientists are working to understand the working of the human brain.
This is a tubular structure, a continuation of the brain lying in the neural canal of the vertebral column. The three main meninges, pyometer, arachnoid membrane, and the durameter cover the spinal cord as in the case of brain. The spinal cord has two enlargements, one in the neck region called cervical plexus and another in the lumbar region of the vertebral column, lumbar plexus. The lower end of the spinal cord is filamentous and is called filum terminale. On the mid-dorsal side of the spinal cord is found a narrow depression called dorsal fissure, and on the mid-ventral side of the spinal cord is found a deep depression called ventral fissure. Running through the center of the spinal cord is the central canal, an extension of the ventricule filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Outer region of the spinal cord contains medulated white neurons and the inner region contains non-medulated gray neurons. The spinal cord conducts impulses to and from the brain and acts as a reflex center.
In this topic, you have learnt the nervous system is composed of brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Nervous system is made up of two kinds of cells, neurons or nerve cells, and glial cells. The three types of nerves are afferent or sensory nerves, efferent or motor nerves, and mixed nerves. Cell body of a neuron has large granules in the cytoplasm called Nissl granules or Nissl substances. When a stimulus is applied to a neuron, a small current, the nerve impulse, is generated. The three divisions of the nervous system are central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and autonomic nervous system. Meninges protect the brain and spinal cord from injuries and provides nutrition to the cells of the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system consists of 43 pairs of nerves. The 10th cranial nerve or vagus is more important as it controls the rate of heartbeat and secretions of the pancreas. The motor fibers take their origin from the ventral horns of the spinal cord and supply information required for the movement of the muscles.